What's up, everybody? Welcome to the What's Brewing podcast. I'm Jordan Harrison, owner of Presto Media and host here. And today's guest, we've got Paul Childers. I said it right. It's not Childers or Childers. But anyways, the whole point of the podcast here is we're going into this episode 8 is to essentially bring together entrepreneurs that are like-minded and here to support each other, because it's a very lonely area to be in. But we need business owners and we need strong people that need help getting through that. And a great network of folks that can really help each other. Doesn't matter whether it's business relationships, personal. But yeah, we want to build a strong community of people that are like-minded in that area and help each other grow. Because like businesses of the future, they're going to be what helps push the world forward. And I used to think as a teacher, it was the educators that would do it. But being in the entrepreneurial world now, I'm like, dude, it's business owners. The mind shift, right, as we go. So Paul, appreciate you hopping in here today, man.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you taking time and having me on.
Yeah, man. So tell us, so you spent a lot of time in the automotive industry. We were doing research on that, and you pivoted into business financing consulting, which comes to financing. You can have that. I have friends that deal with it. I'm like, whatever, what's my payment? So what happened? Like, was there a moment, a client, something that personally experienced and made you just kind of change direction?
I think through my time out of college. So I graduated college right in the recession in 08, 09, and which was a very fascinating time to kind of graduate college and try to go into the job force at that point. Because, I remember literally telling interviewers that you don't even need to pay me what you're offering on this job. I don't have any background. I'm a free, clean slate. I'm willing to just learn whatever it is. And they were still grabbing more qualified people and paying them more with the other experience versus bringing in entry-level people. And so, that kind of left a really bad, and I'm kind of setting some context up here, but that really left a bad taste in my mouth, because those of us that graduated in that kind of time frame there were kind of sold a bag of goods, I think, from a lot of people saying, go to college, get a degree, you'll get a good job, you'll have, good paying, and you'll be able to build a good life, right? My parents grew up, be loyal, and what I quickly found out of school was loyalty doesn't get you anywhere. Loyalty actually gets you at the bottom of the totem pole in the corporate, rat race, if you will. What I found early on was actually job jumping, not in a bad way, but finding a new opportunity and going up in my skill level at different positions and jobs was a big thing for me, right? And that's what kind of got me where I was going. Fast forward to my time as a retail manager in Target, I had some stuff, going on personally that I needed to shift. And I had a manager that was willing to give me hard truths. One of those hard truths was like, dude, you're a very talented person. You have a very rare skill set in the way you read and do things, but you are a lazy individual and you are unfocused and you don't really have any motivations in life, right? You want to talk about a slap in the face of reality. But it was that moment that really kind of set me forward into automotive and changing the way that I do things. And automotive opened me up to a whole new world, because up until that point, I was hourly. I was an hourly worker. I didn't know that you could actually do work and earn what you make based off of performance. And when I realized that, it was like a light bulb switch. Then I had no previous professional sales experience. I was a retail floor manager doing logistics at a Target store. And I sold 293 cars in my first 11 months in car sales. And that was when I made my first $100,000 plus, income. So got really good at that. Right. And I got really connected with different people doing different things. I followed a bunch of different podcasts. I've listened to a bunch of different shows, personal development, the whole kit and caboodle. Went up through the ranks, became a manager. And it was kind of a series of events where I got, into a store, became a manager there, helped turn things around, implement different tools, bring the stores up to a different level of performance and standardization. And then it was like when a different opportunity would come up, I didn't even get an opportunity to have a conversation about, hey, do you want this position or do you want to do this? It was more like, we just went and found this guy from outside. They're going to come in and do this stuff. And it was like, you're just going to deal with it. And so over time, that series of incident, right? And then my raising my level of awareness of what's going on around me it started to make me go, I'm replaceable. Doesn't matter how valuable I am or what they tell me. I am very replaceable at any given point in time. And I'm replaceable even when I'm making other people a ton of money, right? Like I do a good job. I bring a lot of value. We make a lot of money. Kind of one of those things where when I touch something, it just does well. And so, like, in the back of my mind, I think I just started down this track of like, why am I doing this for other people? And why am I in this position where I can bring so much value to a business, and on a drop of a hat, they can just go outside and bring somebody in and be like, oh, well, we thought about you, but we thought it would be better to go bring somebody in versus like promoting you into this position, right? So I think to answer that question, it was just kind of a culmination. There were a lot of doors that were open for me early on that I just ignorantly walked past and shut, and I think it finally got to a point where if you're, a religious person or, believe in universal forces, I just got punted out the door and was like, dude, like, I don't know how much more clear we can make this. Like, you need to just go get out on your own, right? So that's kind of what led to that path.
Here's a swift kick in the ass from God. Wake up, Paul. Wake up. No, that's funny. You said, you just said something that made me think about that. It was like a follow-up question to go with it. I don't remember, because there's several things you hit on, like right in that whole era thing. Oh, I know it was. So let me ask you this though: like, if you didn't go through all of that though, do you think you'd be where you are now?
No, I don't think so. I think if I would have gotten in with a company, that I would have gotten the promotion. I think eventually I would have ended up in some form of ownership, because like my goal was at that point was to always get to a spot where I could get into being an owner of a dealership. So I was already kind of thinking that way. But I think for the betterment of everything, and for my sake, right? Like if you've ever done anything in automotive, you're basically making your spouse a single family unit, because you're married to that dealership and you're married to car sales. So I think I would have eventually got there, not nearly as quickly as I did, and I didn't get there very fast either. I was 37 when I started this. So
yeah, my best friend works on the finance side for automotive. A very large company. He started in doing the financing for automotive, like dealers like you would call, and he would offer financing options, and that's where he started. And then he worked his way in that company. He does training for him now. But anyway, but yeah, I know what you mean there. He talks about all the time. Those dudes are just like it's a different breed of folks.
yeah,
And it does take a lot out, but some of them can make really good money too.
you can make very good money.
Do you follow Andy Ellett at all?
Do I follow what? Oh yeah,
Andy?
yeah, I know who he is. I knew who he was in automotive space as well when I was there. And personally coming from that space, he never had a very good reputation in that space. And then to see that he, started that coach, I follow him, but I don't really care much for him.
Yeah, he's not not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of him. I just thought it'd be interesting with you in that world. What you go back just a second. You said you were talking about education. So you graduated in 08 from college, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you're only a couple years younger than me, because I graduated in 06. What how did being in entrepreneurship, because this has changed for me. It's changed my mindset on college, changed my mindset on education, right? Being an educator for 15 years, wife and 20, that's what I always wanted to do until I got out. So you have kids, right?
Yep.
What's your thought process on education now, being an entrepreneur, being in the business world, gone through college, probably have the debt racked up like most of us? Like, has that changed at all?
I mean, I'll be honest, I probably never should have went to college in the first place. I was an idiot through school. I barely was a C average student in high school. Collectively, our room in my first year of college at the first school I went to was probably like a 1.67 GPA average between all of us, because we just goofed off and were dumb the whole time. Transferred schools, went to a different school. I had to sell myself in front of the board of trusts and deacons and all that kind of stuff. They're not deacons, but whatever. to stay in, right? Because they're like,
Yeah.
you're failing out. Like, if you want to stay, you've got to tell us why you want to stay. And so, like, didn't realize it then, but I was apparently a pretty good salesperson because a moron like me was able to sell these people on why they should keep me in the school and not kick me out. But met my wife at school, and for the betterment of it, for the fact that I learned how to delegate, I ended up graduating with just under a 3.0 coming from that far around. So, but it's fascinating. I never used my college degree for pretty much anything I've done, right? I was a marketing and econ major. And none of the jobs I worked were ever in that spot, ever in that, situation. I was one of those people that thought, and I probably do have some touches of ADHD and all that ADD, all that kind of stuff. But really what it is, in my opinion, is I'm a high functioning individual that doesn't do well in settings where I'm forced to sit down and I'm forced to be told to absorb information that really, honestly, like some of it, like I liked history, I liked geography. I hated math until I learned how to actually apply math to real world situations and make things more efficient, right? Like I never really liked finances until I realized, oh, wow, like actually, if you do these things and look at these numbers this way, it paints this entire large picture. And so I am very anti sit in a desk for 8 hours and expect to learn some stuff. And I'm a lot more like, hey, let's go hands on, let's question things, let's try and trial and error on a lot of things. And so, while I'm not against school in so much the core competencies of school, because I do think the way that school is handled right now is actually also a pretty good lesson for kids because it teaches you how to live within constructs while also being able to think for yourself and go against the status quo. I think that's a good aspect of it. I tell my kids all the time, like, if it doesn't feel right, it doesn't sound right, question it and question it to the ends of the earth because it probably isn't. But it's also good because it's a good social environment for them to be in. But in applicability to life, if I could go back and I know what I know now, I would have just left high school and when I was suffering in high school and just started, figuring out the world and probably would have had a multi-million-dollar business by now, right? Like but again, you have to go through these things, I think, to get yourself to a spot where you're ready and mature enough to handle it. Some of us, it happens sooner than later.
Yeah, no, I agreed. I love it. It's interesting. So, we're 8 episodes deep in, and of course, I have obviously conversations with entrepreneurs outside of here, but you'll be surprised how often or not that people talk about being ADHD or a part of that, and then people talk about like how the constructs of education was like this was not for me, and how many of those went on to own successful businesses. Like it's kind of like, oh, I see the pattern now. It's very interesting how many conversations come up. We've had clients and people that we've dealt with and still talk to now. They're like, dude, I didn't even graduate high school, but they're running a 8-figure roofing company, and we're just like, golly.
Yep.
And so I challenge people now. I'm like, look, intelligence isn't what the teachers say or what the grades say. The intelligence is like, how do you communicate your value? How do you show up in the world?
Yeah.
It's interesting, dude. It all comes full circle.
It is very interesting. And I think, being that kid that was kind of a little bit hyperactive, I didn't sit still. I was usually in trouble in classes, causing trouble. Kind of looking back, it was kind of in a lot of ways, it's just a lack of the stimulus that I needed, to be creative, to be curious. I've never done well when people are like, this is exactly how you're going to do it. And there's no other way to do this. Cause I'm immediately like, well, I bet there is some way, right? Like there's gotta be a gray area here, and within the constructs of the thing, but that's very typical of entrepreneurs, I think. But also, I appreciate that I did go through the college and the education phase. It also taught me that, if you apply yourself to certain things, you can actually end up turning around and being successful at it, right? Like, I mean, I was literally on the cusp of getting kicked out of college. And fortunately, I met my wife at that time, and she was good enough to like kind of slap me and be like, dude, like, what are you doing? And then, prove to myself that, hey, I can turn this around and, graduate, and I got a degree. Now, does that degree really mean anything to me right now? Not really. I Like I don't display it anywhere or nothing. So
Yeah, well, I mean, it is. I mean, obviously, mine was in music education, so like I fully used mine to its abilities, and then got a master's in instructional leadership. So like, I was like, hey, I want to be a superintendent. Probably would have been a hell of a superintendent, but I didn't want to kiss anybody's ass. So when I figured out there's political games that you had to play in education, I was like, nope, I ain't got time for that. Like, I ain't got time. I'm not gonna kiss somebody's butt to move up when I'm better than what they are. So, as egotistical as that sounds, I learned from some really good leaders in education that taught me so much about being a leader, which changed the way I grew band programs, changed the way I dealt with people, everything. And then, and even to business now, like as I'm hiring new people and moving that leadership role out of the in the weeds so much, like I'm trying to apply everything that I learned as a leader to people that come on board. And so far, everybody loves it. We'll see how it goes.
that's fair.
So you, like me, you're a first generation entrepreneur, I'm guessing, right? So you don't have a family playbook, you don't have like some inherited business. Like, what was it like starting from scratch, and what do you wish someone had told you before you made this leap?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that I'll touch on, just because I think not enough people talk about this either. You know, after I left automotive, I worked a year as a sales director and a C-suite executive for a nationwide construction tire and ag company, and I was making, automotive. I was making 115, $120,000 a year. I grew up in a comfortable home. My dad was an engineer for 3M. My mom was a teacher. So like I had a very comfortable life. I was living the dream, right? Like I had kind of everything I needed, was taken care of. We had money, all that kind of stuff, right? So I didn't have any drug addictions. I didn't have any, I didn't come from a poor family. I didn't come from nothing. And when I actually made the switch to entrepreneurship, I had, mutually walked away from this tire company where I was making 150K plus commissions. So about, right around 200,000 a year, roughly. And mutually parted ways with them when they made some corporate, changes, and decided to start my own company. And, people talk about how hard it is to kind of come from nothing and build from there, but I don't think enough people talk about how hard it is to break away from comfort, a high level of comfort, and really struggle to kind of maintain that standard of living your first 2 years of opening a company from scratch, and not having any freaking idea what I was doing. I had been part of large, corporate teams and run stuff, but I have to make the decision. I have to implement and integrate this thing if it's going to work. I'm not an integrator. I actually hate integrating. I got to watch YouTube videos on how to do this. That's not happening because I hate that. Like I can't sit down and watch a YouTube video to learn something. I don't have the time for that. So, so kind of to layer that in, I not only was I starting something that I had no idea what I was doing, literally. Like I told my wife one day, I was like, I think I'm gonna start my own company. And she's just like, what? I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh, okay. I don't think she thought I was serious. But then I did. And it was an interesting journey to say the least, right? Because it was just a lot of mental growth. It was a lot of the spiritual humbling. Because when you go from somewhere where you can just kind of spend money and not really think too much about it, to all of a sudden you're trying to figure out how you're going to pay the mortgage. You've got car bills that are due. You've got vendors you've got to pay. You've got this kind of stuff. Your comfort is broken very quickly and very harshly. And mentally, it kind of put me into a weird spiral towards the end of 23, the first year that I was kind of doing this stuff, because I'd never been there, right? I'd never been to a spot where I didn't have enough money to cover, payments, to cover a mortgage, to get bills paid on time. I had a late pay on my credit. My credit went from an 800 during this time. I was at an 830, and I went all the way from an 830 down to a 645. And mentally that, me, so, man, it was just it was a brutal first year of a lot of things. But the thing it taught me was I'm extremely resilient, or stupid and stubborn. It's one of the three. What would I like to have known before I jumped into it? That I was an idiot and I should have just went and found an existing company and bought it and jumped in. No, but yeah. No, I don't know, man. I love that question, but I also don't like it because honestly, like, I think you just have to jump in and you just have to take the lumps. Like, you can learn. You could have told me everything there was about entrepreneurship, the ins and the outs, the goods and the bads, but until I jumped in and experienced it for myself, no amount of education and teaching would have prepared me for what I faced. And that's just the fact. Like, I got my ass kicked the first 2 years that I was in business, like up and down the road. It was awful.
I always say I failed the first time around. I had to quit. I had to put in, and I worked for another marketing company for a year, only to find that they were screwing folks over. And I had brought them clients in. The clients were mad at me because, whatever it may be. But, I had to learn the same like you. And it's funny, you tell the story of going from comfort to like really just getting thrown in the fire. And no, you're right. Nobody talks about that story because they feel like, oh, well, you were in comfort. You had all these amazing things. And I remember telling, like I'm like you. I wasn't a drug addict. I was a good student. I did great in college. I crushed it in college. I crushed it in all my band jobs that I had. I was a great educator. Like there was never a time that I was like, yeah, I got better as I went. But there's never a time I was like, Jordan, you just suck as a human being. I felt like, right. I didn't do anything terrible. But then all of a sudden it's like, hey, guess what? You're going to go from, now we didn't make a lot of money as a teacher, but we could pay bills for the most part. And you're like, hey, guess what? I'm just going to not have predictable income coming in every month. And we're going to figure out how we're going to pay bills. So yeah, but nobody talks about that story. And I think, I don't know. It's almost sometimes I think when your back's against the wall and you come from the ground up, nothing, it's like, that's an amazing story. Mm-hmm. Yours is too. Like, I mean, just think about that for a moment. Like, what does it do? Really, it's like you humbled yourself on purpose and you like, I'm going to beat myself up to make myself better than what I was.
Yeah.
So I think, you're right. And more people should hear that story, and then they don't talk about it. And sometimes I think, and another reason why I think this is a great podcast idea, right? It is to talk about those things that people think that their story is not good enough to tell because they're like, well, I didn't come from nothing and build something great. Bullshit. Like, you put yourself into nothing.
Yeah.
you came out of it. And you're still in business, right? And so that's the other thing that people talk. They're like, oh, well, I didn't make 7 figures this year. Who fucking cares? Are you in business? Yeah. Did you pay bills? Did you make money? Did you have a good time? Did you help people? Great. You're a successful business owner. Congratulations. And I don't think enough people talk about that either. And so that's the part that just, it's so frustrating with some of these jokers out in the world that are like, well, if you're not doing this amount of money in your business, you're just not a good business owner. I'm like, screw you. Screw you.
I agree.
So talk to me a little bit. So you decided to jump into the entrepreneurship world. Did you have like a vision of like, now that I'm going to do this thing, like I'm thinking about this with my family. I'm thinking about a legacy. I'm thinking about what do I want to do? Or was it just like, shit, we got to make money so I can pay some bills? Like what went through your head when you're like, did you have a vision or you're just like, fuck it, let's do this?
Yeah. The funny part was I was kind of just miffed about, having to walk away from a corporate job due to some changes and, kind of that mental area of like, what the heck, man? Like, what have I done wrong to get, kind of cast aside from companies that I helped make a ton of money for? So when I was like, hey, I'm just going to start a business, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no kind of idea what kind of business. I had some knowledge on certain things. And so when I first started, I actually started as a 1099 contractor under Paul Childers Consulting with a company called J. Galt, which was a terrible company to work for. It was a giant Ponzi scheme that I got screwed out of some money on. But what I learned from that, the 3 or 4 months that I was in with these guys, was that business credit is a need out there. I actually understood the underwriting of it because I did fleet financing in the vehicle world on EIN only. and that there were a bunch of jokers that were in this room that had no idea what they were talking about, that were selling this program to owners for like $10,000 to $15,000. And I was like, this is kind of weird. Like, how is this happening? And so that kind of led me down this path of like, oh, wow, like there's people out here that are literally just lying to people and getting money. Like, what would happen if I actually like help people understand, like, here's how you actually apply for a vehicle under your business with the EIN, and this is what it looks like. So when I left Jay Galt, to kind of do this, then I went and got into the brokering space where I was a finance broker and I was a lender. And that's what made me realize like there's super predatory lending happening in this world, and people aren't being very honest with owners as well. So then I was like, well, okay, how do I take this and create this into something where I just can run a purely educational, data-driven, fact-driven, unbiased, like information-driven business where we come as a partner with owners and just teach them and show them this is what underwriting's like. Here's what banks are looking for. Here's how you do all this stuff, right? All that to be said is, no, I had really no idea at the time what I was wanting to get into or where I was kind of going for this. My vision's gotten a lot clearer. I think the biggest thing was I just had to start walking the path. But the one thing I did know when I started this is that I wanted to create freedom for my family, and I didn't want to build my family around the business. I wanted to build the business around my family. And so I've been very intentional about that and trying my best to keep that stuff separate, which is difficult for sure. I mean, I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in seasons. But I also believe in, if you have stuff, you got to respect those lines, and you've got to give your highest value of time to the people that you are intending to give it to when you intend to give it to those people. But it's kind of just one of those things where, as I started down this path, the path that I was walking almost started to appear much brighter and clearer the further down I started walking, to the point now, like, I don't need to write down a goal. I don't need to write down anything. I know exactly where I want to go. I know exactly how I want this company positioned. I know exactly how I want to disrupt the market. And it's just kind of crazy. And that was just pure, going back to what we were talking about before, right? Like, I was up on the cliff and I was like, hey, you know what? It's not really fun up here. I'm going to throw myself down to like the rock bottom and then work my way back up again. But that's what it took to be able to kind of have this vision that's really massively evolved from when I first started this company. It was like, yeah, it'd be cool to be like a $5 to $7 million a year company. 5 to 7 years in now, where now I'm sitting here going, how do I get to 75 to 100 million and exit for north of that?
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. That's awesome. There's so much alignment in what you're doing and what I'm doing as well, and that's or at least how you vision things, right? And kind of jump into it. The family part is hugely important on my end, where I will sacrifice business growth right now to go do some fun shit with my kids in a heartbeat. I don't care. I don't care what my revenue level is. Am I helping my current clients? Are they getting success, right? Are they being helped? And then am I being present for my kids? Am I showing them how to do things right? I think that's important. You were talking about market disruption, and you're talking about predatory people. Obviously, probably a lot of folks in the marketing space, the digital marketing space, being connected with contractors and stuff. We have to deal with the same thing, predatory people. And there's some, matter of fact, I got on a call yesterday with a young kid that wanted to, like, he was begging to give me money to hire him to do marketing. And I said, it's not the right time. I said, do you know how to answer the phone? How do you answer the phone when people call? Do you know what a customer journey is? Do you know I just started walking through all these questions, and he's a young kid. And I was like, look, nobody should ask any money from you. I said, I guarantee you, if you didn't talk to me today, you'd talk to somebody and they would have said they'd have got you 50 leads tomorrow. You'd have been mad. You didn't know how to handle them. You'd have said they were trash, and you'd have never thought marketing never worked again. So like, it's hard sometimes because, I mean, dude, I could steal anybody's money, and I just have to look at folks all the time. I tell more people no than I say yes.
Yep.
And I think I'm hoping that is a marketing disruptor down the road for us in general, right? Because there's so many people that are just like, this is trash. Like, I will talk myself out of a sale, and I've done this because I'm like, you're not in the right mindset yet to do marketing. you don't understand this takes 12 months. You're not willing to put in the work. And I know you aren't. And they're like begging to give me money. And I'm like, nope, we're not doing this now. And so, and that to me, I'm hoping that that's my disruption, because I'll look at the end of the call and go, I want you to be successful. It doesn't have to be with us, but you're not in the right mindset to be successful in marketing. And therefore I can't in good conscience take you on as a client, and will not do it. And so people don't like hearing that, but that's the honesty side. And it's hard sometimes. It's hard because you're like, shit, that was, over 12 months, that was 30 grand. I just flushed down the toilet when I could have easily had the sale, but I would have had the biggest pain in my ass. So I think that you're on the right path there, man. It's hard in that space, and especially in marketing too. And then as fast as our world changes, like from like 12 months ago, AI was irrelevant to search. Now there's 500 million users on ChatGPT weekly, and you're like, shit, that's like way more than social media. So now you got to think 5 years ahead. What do we need to do now? So, you get it, man. You get it. So talk to me about, sorry, go ahead. Were you going to piggyback on that?
No, I was just going to say, I was talking to my wife the other night because March has been kind of just a weird month in general. I think, March is always kind of a weird month because it's when people kind of initial waves of people get hit with that. Oh, by the way, your taxes are going to be this, and it's like, oh, right. Mm-hmm. But I was telling my wife, I was like, I sit there and I look at all of this stuff, and I'm like, we could be so much further ahead if I had zero morals. Because I would have just stayed in lending and just made it absolute just clubbing. And some of them do. You still have to have some integrity and some character because you got to have people come back to you. But man, sometimes I feel like having a high level of morality and ethics slows you down in a lot of ways. And I know we'll eventually get to where we want to go. And it's not that we're doing bad. But it just shows how easy it is to come in and be a very manipulative liar, sell people on a bag of goods, not actually deliver on stuff. And you can still become look at all the influencers that are out there that have made big money that all of a sudden, what do they do? What do they actually do? Right. So no, I 100% agree with that. It's just kind of one of those funny observations. I'm like, whatever, I'd rather go to bed at night being able to sleep, knowing that I didn't screw somebody over or put them out of business than what these people do, which is I can't imagine that any of their rest is ever very restful.
Yeah, it's rough, dude. I don't understand it. So to tell me about this is a question I probably should integrate on every call. What do your bad days look like? And how do you pull yourself out of those days you feel like you're lonely and you're like, wow, I want the paycheck again?
I will say this. I've been very fortunate to surround myself by a very strong group of insane individuals that all think on the same wavelength. So like our chats, our text messages, I've got people that are operating businesses that I always joke that like, I hope that we don't all cycle up on bad months or bad weeks because we'd all be in for it. But it's been a rough stretch. I'll be honest. March has been really brutal. We had a really good February, had a really good January. Had just all of a sudden have had I get a little bit of revenue from commission from like my lending partners that I lend to. One of my main ones has been doing a reorg and a shuffle. So like our flow of payouts and stuff has been cut off. So I haven't had that. I've got 6 or 7 clients right now that have all given yeses like 2 or 3 times that haven't paid yet. And so like, that's like 12, 13K that I'm waiting on from there, hoping it will come in. I don't like to hard close people. I'm not that type of person. I also realize if you hard close somebody into a service like marketing or ours, it's never going to work. So I do it. Right. But it's been a really brutal stretch. Yes, I have monthly recurring. I also made the stupid decision that I was going to do a full rebrand and do some other stuff. And so I paid a couple large sums of money right at the start of the month because I was like, oh, I had a good month in February. March will be just fine. And it's kind of all went to shit. And so like the last couple of days have been just like, it's just been a drag. Like I told a buddy of mine, I was like, I didn't want to get out of bed today. I didn't want to go to work. I didn't want to go work out. it was kind of almost like one of those things. Oh, and then I woke up this morning and a vendor had double dipped on me for, $2,800 and drawn my business account down to under 1,000, and I was like banking on some of that money to make it through the weekend, plus some money that we were going to collect today. And it's just kind of like, I woke up and I'm just like, man, I woke up, I was in a bad mood, and then I got kicked in the nuts again. And I'm just like, why even go in and do anything today? Like, why? It doesn't matter. Like, nothing's going to change. It's all going to be crap, but fact of the matter is you still put your pants on one leg at a time. You put your shoes on, you get on, you have a couple calls. I had a very good call with the referral partner, potential partner this morning that really kind of just changed my outlook on things. Had some good conversations with people, friends, had some laughs, but it's hard sometimes, right? I mean, last February I had pneumonia and I was down. I was bedridden. I only had one employee. I didn't have anybody to handle calls. I didn't have anybody to manage my clients. I lost a bunch of clients. That's what made me realize I needed to actually hire people. But it's hard. It's not an easy mindset to get out of. And I noticed too that it was dragging like my family down as well, because like I was in a funk like probably the last like 5 days.
Yeah.
Oh, and my sales guy left me too. My sales guy had quit last week for a better position as well, which I don't blame him for. I don't have any ill will that way. But what I think a lot of people don't realize in business is that when things are going good, they're going good. When things go bad, shit spins fast and it seems to stack on you really, really fast. And if you don't have a strong foundation to work off of, if you don't have, if you're just not prepared and grounded, or have people around you that are grounded that can literally just reach down and rip your ass out of that like slope, I can understand why a lot of owners end up going down the route where they end up committing suicide over stuff when things spins on them. Because what do? Like, everybody relies on you, and then you fail, or you feel like you failed. And now your wife is going, why don't we have money for this? Why don't we have that? Your kids are asking, why don't we have money for this? Why don't we have that? Nobody from your thought that was friends reached out to you to go, hey man, like, how are you doing? How are you actually doing? Not just, hey, how's your day? Like, we have a check-in where it's like, how are you really doing? Like, you're trying to disguise this with sarcasm and funny memes, but like, what's actually going on? Are you good? Do you need something? Right? Yeah. Like, shit go that bad that we need to figure out how to pool money and get it to you to make it through this weekend so you can cover stuff. Is it that bad? Or like, where are you at?
Yeah.
That's what you need.
And I've got, and luckily in my realm of things, I've got best friends. If I ever was like, and they've done it for me in the past, where I had no money in between jobs, or I'm like, I need $200. And they're like, no problem, it's on the way. I never had to ask for anything more than that, but I'm grateful. Nobody talks about that enough either in business, where I think I was like you. January, we had a killer month. February, great month. But halfway through February, we decided I was like, all right, we're going to hire more people, because our business was doing that, the loop to loop, right? You get ahead, you get stuck on delivery, you get behind on leads, and you get, so finally I was like, all right, I've figured out our two biggest bottlenecks. So I hired for those two positions, and thank God, because they're amazing people. Josh, I brought on Josh and Syra, and they've been amazing. So that being said, but like all of a sudden now, cash flow took a hit because we had a bunch of projects where people have still not responded to be able to finish these website projects. I'm not mad at them. They're busy. They're business owners. To get the last end of the projects completed, get the money in, right? So like cash flow just got hit, and then you added 2 new employees, and then you had tried to add something else a month ago, and that didn't work, and so that was also hitting the cash flow. Now all of a sudden the people at the city are like, hey, you hadn't paid this yet. And then next, I'm with you, man, and now all of a sudden you're like, shit. So you're like, crap. So it's hard to see those days in the end. I do personally do counseling, and we talk about business the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that when I told her, I said, look, most of my problems are triggered by money, and triggered, like that's that's my trigger for downward spiral. Because if I can't support my family, like I would, that's my trigger of anxiety. And so I literally talk about business half the time. In probably 75% of the time that I'm in counseling is like I'm tiring it. And the lady has nothing. She doesn't know squat about business other than she's, a counselor herself. So I think it's interesting you say that. I was never for counseling until recently. And I put myself in there. I was like, nope, I have to have the mindset to get through the days like you're talking about to be able to go. She's like, are all these things true? Like, when things are going really bad, I'm like, well, no, not everything's true. She's like, what is true? And so it's been helpful to me. And I think more people need that because we don't talk about the shitty days.
Yeah. There are some good books out there, that help with some stuff, but again, like books, knowledge, information, like all of it's great and it's handy, but unless you're mentally mature enough to process it and actually apply it, it doesn't really mean anything, And so one of the practices that I kind of have when I get into these like slumps is I always just go back. I go back to where I was. Where was I 2 years ago? Where was I 3 years ago? Where was I this time last year? Right. And I just kind of fall back into like a gratitude mode of like, I'm grateful to have these stresses that 2 years ago, I remember, praying to have, right? Like, because I was an idiot and I jumped off to start this business thinking it was going to be great and I was broke. And so I prayed to have months where I was like, man, it'd be great to collect 15K. Man, that was a record month for me, 2.5 years ago was 15K. Now I'm sitting here going, man, it'd be nice to have 15K, but it's frustrating, but it's not going to shut our lights off. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of, keeping yourself grounded in those times where that's happening. I have, again, like I said, I got some of the guys that I talk to are way ahead of me. And it's like, they're like, I know what you're going through. Like, we're waiting on like, $550,000 to get paid in that's, 20 days past due. And I'm just like, wow, that's a different level of a problem. Like,
yeah. You're like, I'm glad I don't have those problems yet.
Yeah, right. So it's just one of those things. I think as you go through it, you just have to have people that understand, like, understand the insanity of being a business owner to a point. When I text somebody that I'm on the roof with a glass of bourbon listening to Creed, thinking it'd be fun to just kind of, swan dive off the roof, I don't really mean it. I just maybe feel like that in the moment, but that's just, it's just, it is what it is. Right. Like, and not many people understand that.
Yeah. Well, and it's the one comfort I've always had is in the past 2 years, I've been offered 12 jobs without even asking for one. They're like, why don't you just come work for me? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. And I'm talking about from some like massively huge companies. One, I won't name in particular, but there's one that they're doing like 30 million a year sales organization. You've probably seen who they are online, but I met with the actual owner, the CEO, the head guy, did an interview with him impromptu. And he was like, by the end, we ended up not doing it right. I ended up starting Presto Media instead. But at the end, he goes, anytime you need a position, we'll have you. Period. End of story. And so I'm always like, if things go to shit real quick, I got a backup plan. I'll just call some people and I'll go find a job. So I'm not ever worried about it. I want to wrap up with one thing because I don't want to we talk about the hard parts of entrepreneurship. There are great things too that we got to celebrate. Talk about if you're talking to every small business owner in America, right? Because we're all in the same boat here. If they could hear one thing from you right now that they're probably getting wrong about money, business, whatever, you decide. What do you think? What is it?
The one thing I've learned is imperfect action will always trump perfect planning every single day of the week. If you don't know, just start and just continue to do it, right? I knew nothing about social media posting until I started this business. And I've posted 4 times a day, roughly, for, 3 years straight now almost. And I've got, this still kind of blows my mind. I've got 8,000 people that apparently find me interesting enough to follow and interact with me. I have over 250,000 views on my personal dashboard over the last 28 days on stuff that I posted, right? I mean, so that's where that comes from. Like, my content isn't great. I don't have a podcast studio. I don't have $15,000 worth of cameras. I don't have the perfect software. I don't have the perfect database. I don't have the perfect, face for camera, right? I'd probably have more of a radio voice. But just do it and don't stop. And I think a lot of people just, they get so stuck in, well, I don't have this yet, and I got to make sure that this is in place before I do this, and and I'm just like, no, you just do it. You either do it or you don't. There's no perfect timing. There's not some wand that you can wave that's going to make the situation better. So just start taking action, and just start taking action semi-intentionally. You don't even need to know exactly what the action is and what the outcome is going to be, like 100%. If you're 50%, do it. And just start testing the water. I didn't know everything about what I do when I first started, but I knew enough to be confident enough to open my mouth and talk to people, right? And then you just learn from experience. You learn from doing. You learn from asking questions. You learn from being around others that are doing what you're doing or doing similar things. You learn by being around business owners and understanding their needs. So if there's one thing you can take away from anything, it's just, if you're stuck and you're just doing paralysis by analysis, stop and just start doing, and you'll solve probably 95% of your problems.
Yeah, I had a business coach that was his thing. He's like, take imperfect action right out of the gate. Great Aussie. I need to get him on the podcast, by the way.
Yeah.
Again, I've been blowing up his DMs like, hey, when are we gonna do that podcast? Big sales dude. I mess with him a lot, and be like, hey, like, let's do this thing. So anyway, cool, awesome. Well, dude, man, we're around on 45 minutes. I usually try to keep around there. Man, I appreciate you coming on. You've got great stories, great insights to those who understand that, like, hey, you're a human being. We're all trying to do better in the world. We're here to help. And that, like, entrepreneur life is hard and it sucks sometimes. And we need a great network of folks. So 100 episodes in, I hope they look back and people are going back and watching this and seeing your story and understanding, like, hey, man, I'm right with this. I'm right with Paul right now. He's with me. Paul just, God just kicked my ass right now. So yep. I'm hearing it. So I know something great is coming. So no, I appreciate you hopping on. Appreciate you sharing your story.
Likewise. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. Thanks.